Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I'm back again today doing another video. And the focus of today's video is going to be specifically on Mike D'Antoni and where I think that he should coach next. So if you're unfamiliar, Mike D'Antoni stepped away from the Houston Rockets after they lost in the second round to the Lakers of the 2020 playoffs. His contract was up and they basically asked him, or they didn't even ask him, he just came to them and said, like, I'm not seeking a contract extension with the Rockets, I just want to be done here. And so he's gone now, and he is not committed to coach anywhere. He's basically the equivalent of, I guess you'd say, a free agent coach. So I think really there's about three different destinations I could see Mike D'Antoni ending up. There's the Pelicans, there's the 76ers, and then there's the Indiana Pacers. I'll kind of go through each team and talk about what would probably be like the positives and negatives of going to each place, or like the pros and cons. And then I'll kind of give my decision on where I think would be the best place for him. So I think the first place you think about is New Orleans, and you say to yourself, for a team that likes to run and gun, has a lot of really young guys, he could be an ideal fit because of his previous 7 seconds or less offense and his adoration or inclination to run and gun a lot with Steve Nash and the Suns. It's interesting because he actually didn't do as much of that in Houston. They weren't on like a 7 seconds or less kind of deal. They just were about spacing, not exactly fast play, but I think he would probably revert more to the fast play with the Pelicans, because when you think about that roster, they would probably, they have lots of young guys, so they can run fast, like Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball. Zion is young, but I don't know how fast he can run at this point with his body shape. But I think that's, I guess, the positive is that they'd have the personnel to run fast and go at a high pace like Mike D'Antoni would want. I think the negative, though, excuse me, is that Mike would have to put Zion at center, I think almost exclusively, unless they get a player in there who's like a really good spacing center, like Nikola Vucevic or something. I don't know how they would acquire him, but you'd need a center like of that caliber of shooting to comfortably put Zion at the 4. Otherwise, I think Zion basically has to play center. And then your lineup is probably looking something like Lonzo, JJ Redick, Josh Hart, Ingram, and Zion. And that, again, feels like super small ball like he was doing in Houston. And, again, it's not for they would be a really fast team and make it up and down the court a lot, but they just would struggle as far as rebounding, I think, and even spacing with Zion and Lonzo on the court at the same time wouldn't be great, considering neither have a reliable shot. I know Lonzo's improved, but it's still not reliable. Okay, so that's kind of the positive and negatives of New Orleans. They can play fast, but they have a lot of centers on the roster right now who can't shoot, so you basically have to play Zion at center, which would make them really poor at rebounding. Next team is Philly. Philly, I don't see this fit at all, honestly. I think basically they would have to trade Joel Embiid for like a really good like small forward who can shoot really well. Like, could you flip something like Paul George for Joel Embiid? I don't know. I don't know if that deal's out there, but I feel like they'd have to do something like that. They'd have to get like a small forward or ball handling wing back who can play off ball and can shoot really well, which is what a guy like Paul George could be. But I think as presently constructed, again with Simmons and Embiid, if you want Mike D'Antoni, I basically think you can't have Embiid on this roster because he kind of goes against what Mike D'Antoni likes. Mike D'Antoni likes to run everything really fast or have everything super spaced. From the really fast aspect, Joel Embiid basically goes directly against that. And then if you want to say super spaced, well, both him and Simmons don't really space it well, so one of them has to go. And I think at this point, they'd lean more towards getting rid of Embiid just because he's older and more injury prone. But, they could really end up getting rid of either. They both had their injury problems. If I were Philly, I'd probably try and trade Embiid. I think you could. I don't know which guy you'd actually get more value for on the market, but I think that Simmons just has more potential, so I'd keep him. Even though Embiid's probably like right now it's like the better player. So yeah, I think if they go with Embiid, they'd have to if D'Antoni were to go to Philly, he'd probably have to trade Embiid to speed things up and improve the spacing. And I guess you could slot Horford at center, and then let's say they get like a guy like Paul George back for Embiid. If just in a hypothetical, that would work out pretty well, and that you'd have spacing on the floor for everybody, but Ben Simmons, so they can basically run like what the sets that D'Antoni was running in Houston around Westbrook. They could run the same just around Simmons in Philly. So I mean that could work, but they'd have to do some wrangling of the offense. Now the team that I actually think I like the best for Mike D'Antoni is Indiana, and the reasons why are, I think between Brogdon and Oladipo, both of those would really thrive in D'Antoni's kind of like the ball handler does it all offense. I actually think that they probably run things more through Brogdon and make Oladipo more of an off-ball guy. That's solely based on the Oladipo injury and if he comes back after free agency. Let's say he comes back next year and is like fully healthy, then I would say run the ball through Oladipo as sort of a poor man's James Harden. And I think Malcolm Brogdon is a pretty good spot-up shooter considering he's a 50-40-90 guy and he didn't handle the ball much in Milwaukee. He did last year with Indiana mainly because Oladipo was out, but he can play off-ball just fine. So in a world where Oladipo resigns and is fully healthy, I think you basically make him the Steve Nash or Jeremy Lin or James Harden of this Indiana offense, and then you have pretty good spacers around him and T.J. Warren and Brogdon. And then I think if you're going to have D'Antoni in here, you got to get rid of either Sabonis or Turner just to free up the spacing. A trade that's been thrown around a ton is Miles Turner being flipped for Gordon Hayward. I like that trade quite a bit. You slot Sabonis at center. Hayward, I guess, is your smaller power forward, and then you have Warren, Oladipo, and Brogdon finishing up the lineup. That is a really well-spaced lineup, and I actually think that Sabonis being such a gifted passing center opens up a lot for a D'Antoni offense that typically just runs the ball through one ball handler. If you have a guy who at center he can't shoot very well. I would say like 18 feet is kind of the extent of his range, not really threes much though. But his ability to pass really well could be useful in this D'Antoni offense. And I just think it's the most seamless fit for some reason. I think the spacing is the best, which is a big thing apparently for D'Antoni now. The spacing in Indy is instantly better than it is in New Orleans or Philly, even just with their currently constructed roster, because Turner can still shoot decently from outside, and basically Sabonis is the only person scoring in the paint. And if not him, then Oladipo, I guess, from slashing. But yeah, I think that this is a relatively young team too. Like Oladipo's 28, Brogdon 26, Sabonis 24, Turner's like 26 or 27. They're all like relatively young and can keep up pretty well. So they can run fast and they can space it well, and they're young. So I think that's kind of like the ideal team for D'Antoni right now. That's really all I got, guys. If you have other opinions on where Mike D'Antoni should go or who would be his best fit or different moves that different teams should make in thinking of acquiring him as a coach, let me know in the comments. And thank you for your time and have a good day. Bye.